Let's make a show.
Let's go.
A company like Netflix wants value for money, and you know it is this problem which they have, which is that they have to deliver, or else they will be dropped. And there have been various things over the last few years which have started up and which have been dropped. So Netflix will presumably like any amount of publicity that this engenders, because it'll get people to watch the show. But I suspect that if it doesn't work, then it'll get axed like everything else, because that's what happens in the commercial world. You know, you sink or swim. It's a tough world out there, and you know, you do wonder sometimes how well organized or trained or capable they are of competing in that world, because you know, if you're thinking about cooking, I don't think you think of Meghan Markle as the first person that you want to turn to when you want cooking advice, but I could be wrong. Maybe she'll be brilliant. It may well be that people will want to watch what she's like as a personality when she's engaging, because there'll be going to be other people in this show as well that she's going to be talking to and so forth. So maybe it's a formula that'll work very well. Who knows? But I think in the end, you have to come up with substance, and it'll be interesting to see what sort of substance is produced by this program. That's what I would have thought would be finally the yardstick for Netflix. But maybe the world has changed so much, and it doesn't really matter anymore if the substance. Maybe it's all show, and it's all how it's presented. She does have a big fan base. I mean, there are lots of people, you know, following her, and maybe, I mean, the question it comes down to is, you know, will there be merit in having her jam on your table or one of her other products? I mean, lots of celebrities have given their names to products in the past. As you probably know, couturiers make more money from the scent which they put out under their names than they do from their clothes. For example, you know, the Dior scents and Jean Patou and all those people, they market a scent, and that is usually where the money comes in the long run. Now, the question is Meghan Markle's name big enough and strong enough to go into that market? Once again, let's wait and see. There's almost nothing in the world that is new. Very often you will find that somebody has done it before, and a simple name like As Ever is something which is quite likely to have been used by other people, and this seems to have been proved in one case. And then, of course, coat of arms again. The coat of arms again. It's quite likely that she didn't know about this place, Pereiras, on the island of Majorca. But on the other hand, they say it dates back to 1370, so it's been around for a long time. It will always happen, I think, that people will find a precedent and find something. And so, yes, due diligence should have been done more, but I think it's quite complicated. And I suppose in a way what it shows is a certain sort of hostility towards the whole thing. I mean, if you know, the number of books have the same title, for example, but most people don't really worry about it. They slightly hope that perhaps somebody will buy, you know, your book instead of somebody else's by mistake, and then it'd be quite good. But do you see what I mean? It's quite tricky. It's a tricky issue. I think it's most likely that she had no idea about it at all. It's really happens more the other way around, doesn't it? That somebody else spots her high-profile coat of arms and her high-profile name, and they say, actually, we're already using this, and so I have a certain sympathy there. I think it's difficult for everybody on all sides, to be honest. What does it say, though? It says, I suppose it says, you know, obviously, if you had a coat of arms and you were a little town in Majorca, you know, you'd be pretty irritated to suddenly find it being used by somebody else. But they can't afford to do anything about it. They can't afford to do a plagiarism a charge against it, because they haven't got the money to do it. So they just have to live with that. And as for the man, and I'm sure there'll be several other businesses probably already called As Ever, because it's such an obvious and easy title to think up. they'll be popping up all over the place, I imagine, and probably very cross. I suppose the only way that she could really do it is if she actually uses her own name specifically in the branding, because that would be obviously her. And if you choose a random name, it's quite likely that somebody else has already chosen it for you. And then, of course, you get things like, well, if you think back to Prince Harry's book Spare, it didn't take long before people were saying spare us and things like that. And in fact, there was a little booklet was produced even called that, just so sending it up. I mean, that also is likely to happen. So really, I think probably the only way you can be absolutely certain that it's your brand is if you use your own name, which perhaps she didn't want to do. She does attract a lot of hostility, and probably with a little time, we could all have come up with lots of examples of, I don't know, Hollywood stars calling their memoirs one name or another, or books called Glamour, or, or all those sort of things in the Vogue, Condé Nast might object to, all sorts of different things that people come up with. But I suppose that the overall point is, yes, people are likely to have used it before. It must be almost impossible to trace every user of a coat of arms and every user of a name like As Ever. And so, in a way, I have some sympathy for her in the way that, feeling that, she's bound to be just being attacked because people want to attack her. And maybe actually they're also jumping on the bandwagon. I mean, maybe other people who have got stores and things called As Ever, or businesses called As Ever, might not actually be thinking that their business is going to be threatened by it, but actually they can get a little bit of publicity out of it themselves. We know perfectly well that she doesn't get on with her own family. She's sort of sidelined all of them except her mother, although I could be wrong, but we haven't seen much of her mother recently, have we? And as for the royal family, well, she has to be very careful about using them. I mean, the fact is that people know who she is, and if you Google Meghan Markle, underneath her name it says member of the British royal family. That's what comes up, and so we know who she is. We know that she has that connection, and she's very wise not to push it any further, because I think that's backfired. So, to be fair to her, she's starting to branch out in a new direction. She's trying to do a cooking series on cooking. Whether that's a success or not is yet to be tested, but I think probably quite a lot of people, she probably is. It's always this reinventing, isn't it? It's always reinventing herself, and that's what people do, and that's in a way, I suppose, what you have to do if you're going to be a celebrity, especially if you're going to be a celebrity chef.